Megami Tensei. Ever heard of it, Loverboy? It's now a series with almost 4 decades of media. There's almost 70 games, there's 10 shows, there's countless books, figures, jewelry, laptops, cheese, and regardless of how much content is pumped out over the years, there are some sick... There's some sick people that try and collect it all. Not me. I only collect the games and some books and yeah, a couple figures here and there. But I don't have the cheese yet. This will be a video series showcasing primarily what I have in terms of games, some history about them, what I like about them, and ultimately how much they roughly go for on eBay as of October 2022. As a quick PSA, if you ever want to get into collecting, especially Japanese video games, try not to use eBay. A lot of it is overpriced and it's harder to find as well, but I'll be using it for convenience because, you know, it lets me see sold listings, whereas a lot of other sites, auction sites, Japanese ones, Gumtree, Facebook Marketplace, a lot of them don't let you see sold listings. Someone can work out how much total everything is if they want. I think part of me definitely doesn't want to know that though. This is by no means a complete collection. I have roughly 170 games here, including collector's items, and I believe there is roughly 280 total as of right now. I'll be doing this in order of release over the span of a handful of videos. However, you know, I am missing quite a few things. This is obviously a very expensive hobby and, you know, I do try to love myself still. The benefit of doing it this way though is that you guys can ask me questions and I can answer them. That's cool. So if you want to know anything, shoot away in the comments, whatever. But enough dilly-dallying. So fucking cringe. I'm your host with the most regrets in his life, Gnosis. Join me as I calmly descend into the great cataclysm that is my collection. I slapped that. There's gonna be a handprint. No, I think we're chill. Oh. No, it was only a bit of hair or dust. I don't know. Anyway. Woo! Let's go! Yippee! The year is 1987. You and your boys, you just got finished watching Dirty Dancing, getting all emotional, but honestly, who can blame them? On the other side of the world though, one Aya Nishitani is about to share his own love story, just with demons goring and other questionable things. Digital Devil's story, Megami Tensei, that's the one. It's the one that started it all. Very cool. So I bought mine in a bundle with 7 of the other books. I am missing one, but I got them all for 100 Australian dollars. I am Australian, please forgive me. If you're looking to pick this one up, honestly, like, it's fairly difficult to find, especially on its own. More often than not, you're going to be finding it in bundles. If I had to give an estimate, I'd say probably $15 to $20. Again, I haven't seen it online alone for a very long time, but when you consider the bundles and just dividing, you know, the price evenly, I think you could reasonably get it for about $15 to $20. Digital Devil's Story 2, Warrior of the Demon City. This wasn't nearly as fucking odd as the first book. These first 2, they're very trashy and very sloppy in how they're written, but they are still the beginnings of this massive series. These first 2 have been fan translated if you ever want to check them out. The second book actually feels like a book, so I'd somewhat recommend that, but the first is more just like a fever dream. These books were somehow a success, and as such, Atlus and Telenet gained the rights to create these games. Atlus on the Famicom and Telenet on the home computers. Nishitani actually first tried pitching this to family-friendly company Nintendo, who they weren't the biggest fan of the whole, you know, like demons going at it sort of thing. Something about it not, you know, fitting with their image. Bit weird. It doesn't follow the plot of the book at all. Wasn't actually written by Nishitani either. Instead written by Kazunari Suzuki, who likewise went on to the next couple of games. And you can tell because Nakajima just isn't a complete dick. Next up is the third book, Digital Devil Story 3, Demise of the Reincarnation. I haven't been able to read past this point because, you know, they've gone untranslated, so this would be the perfect time to answer a question because there's not too much to talk about. Lucifer's in this one, with a completely separate design to his game counterparts. That's neat. The collection of the first 3 books also uses the same cover art, so that's also something neat. Moving along, Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei 2. This is, in my opinion, a more appropriate start to the series. The team had a lot more freedom with this one. You know, it has a completely original story done by Suzuki, where the law versus chaos ideas started. And on top of that, this was also Kazuma Kaneko's first game, who became one of the most noticeable figureheads of the entire series. And now back to the books. Here we have the start of Nishitani's sequel to the original novels, New Digital Devil Story, Goddess of Enchainment. Again, I don't know too much about these aside from basic summaries. I know that it follows a new protagonist and that it's set in the same universe after the end of the third book. Aside from that, I can't say I know too much. You know, I'm just hoping that one day we can read these. New Digital Devil Story 2, Queen of the Ice Fields. Here I decided to show off the OBI, which is that little green bit that came with 4 of the books. They're all slightly different, but they all look very similar, so I'm only going to show off one of them. Showing off this OBI gave me something to talk about for a couple seconds, but you know, I still have 2 more books to go, so New Digital Devil Story 3, Planet of the Devil is next. And something that I should mention is that all of the art for these books was done by Hiroyuki Kitazumi, who is probably better known for doing character designs and illustrations for the 2nd and 3rd Gundam shows. If you've ever wondered why the art style looks so familiar, well, that might be why. New Digital Devil Story 4, Wrath of the Young Emperor. I don't know what to talk about here. I left this blank. Actually, that's a lie. I wrote this one has the number 4 in the title, which is true. Yeah. But like, aside from that, I left it completely blank. I didn't give myself any notes. So, this is a book. Enter Shin Megami Tensei. Everything spirals out of control from here. There is so much content beyond this point. Spin-offs, books, remasters, ports, you name it, it's coming up. In a way, it's often considered as a sort of remake to Megami Tensei 2 with more of an Atlas identity. The copy I've got here is a bit scuffed here and there, but then again, I did get this one for relatively cheap. Megami Tensei Gaiden Last Bible is next, and this one was aimed at a more general audience than before this point, and was created by a completely separate team. Honestly, it's a much better game than a lot of people give it credit for, especially with its story additions in the Game Gear remaster. Up next is New Digital Devil Story 5, Eternal Goddess, the last of the new novels I have here. I'll get the 6th one day. I've honestly just forgotten all about it, and again, it's getting these loose is like, you know, it's difficult, so Shin Megami Tensei then got a release on the TurboGrafx PC. This copy I got from my friend Danham, who got it and immediately said, "I don't want this shit, Hayden, take it." So I did. Next up is Majin Tensei, the 4th subseries. I'm not too big of a fan of this one in particular. Gameplay-wise, it's akin to Fire Emblem and other strategy RPGs, but I don't know, like, here I just found it pretty lackluster. And then story-wise, it's a bit too similar to Megami Tensei 2 and SMT 1. I also just hate collecting boxes like these. The white parts often get stained or get noticeable marks. It's just very hard to keep these, in good condition. Next is the third version of SMT, this time for the Mega CD. Not much to say about this one. It had funny cutscenes. That's cool. This box art is also just kind of odd, which is my way of saying that I'm not a big fan of it. But next is one of my personal favorites, Shin Megami Tensei 2. I love this game and I hope that more eventually get to play it. I wouldn't consider it the absolute best in the series. There are hiccups here and there, but it is certainly my personal favorite. It essentially had everything that I wanted in a mainline SMT story. I paid a bit more for this copy to get it pretty much brand new, but generally it's fairly cheap. Either way, it's a great game, gorgeous box art. I love this little fella. Last Bible then got a version on the Game Gear. This version has a bit of additional story towards the end. Now is the time to release some top secret information. So, welcome to another episode of SMT Theology with your host, ggnosis. Today we're talking about this guy for about 30 seconds, which I was keeping for another video about lore, but I don't know if I'll ever make that. Lhasa Balak, as it's written in the fan translation, is considered the entity who created the world of Last Bible 1. Naturally, a character you would think is quite significant. He has 2 results on Google. Likewise, if you look up his Japanese name, which you would pronounce Rasa Baraku, you get 7 results. No one knows who this guy is. So here's the juicy details. It's a reference to Arthur Clarke's novel Childhood's End. This is a story about the Overlords, an alien race who begin to supervise humanity to prevent its extinction before becoming interested in human psychic research, such as Last Bible's Gaia concept. Clearly, it is phonetically spelled in katakana and is not a Japanese word. It is an attempt to write Rasha Varak, who is one of the main Overlords. Likewise, I would assume that the universal will that comes after that boss would be a reference to the Overmind. Shin Megami Tensei If is next. This one's like, fine. It just has some shit dungeons. This is quite literally the only Megaten game that I've played that I dropped and ended up watching the rest on YouTube, so big thanks to Dan over at Off Meister. If it wasn't for you, dude, I'd have additional brain damage, and that arguably wouldn't be very good. Next is Majin Tensei 2 Spiral Nemesis. This one's a huge step up from the first game. Has a pretty cool story that is our first jump into time travel in Megaten, which funnily enough has remained pretty consistent conceptually. It has some good music too. Aoki also worked on the first game. Here the songs just hit different. It's up there with my favorite video game soundtracks in general. I just love it. Megami Tensei Gaiden Last Bible 3 follows that. This released alongside another Bible, which is another Last Bible game. Last Bible 3 was the final big entry in the Last Bible series for around 12 years, until we eventually got New Testament on mobile phones, which until recently on the Nintendo Switch was considered lost media. So it's really cool to see that again. I was probably the only one that was like, holy shit, Last Bible New Testament, woo, that's crazy. But it's a pretty big deal being able to experience these things that we haven't been able to play for, 15 years or so? That's crazy. After that though, we had another Last Bible game, not another fuck. It's called Last Bible Special. Yeah. Fuck. Holy shit, is this a nightmare game? In a way, a prequel to Last Bible 2, which is cool. It's just not very good. But I mean, it does have a pretty fucking cool opening. I'll give it that. Big shout out to Nacho for helping me get this and the first Last Bible on Game Gear for like a reasonable price. These two are also just conveniently the ones that I haven't finished. So maybe I'll try my hand at streaming them. Would people watch a Last Bible stream? I suppose it would be making history being the world's first Last Bible stream, but still. Kyuuyaku Megami Tensei 1 and 2. These are the best ways to play the first games in my opinion. It's good. I like it. I mentioned it before, I'm a big fan of Megami Tensei 2, and here it's simply improved, so check it out, it's pretty cool. This one's one of the more expensive Super Famicom games, if not the most expensive. Yeah, price is on screen, look, woo. Jack Bros is next, and honestly, memes aside, I kinda had a lot of fun with this one. It's simple, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's fun. This was one of the first games I bought for the collection, and I definitely overpaid for it. This is also the first game in the series to be localized, not that it took much effort because there's, hardly any text in the game. And no, you will not be seeing the American version. I will not be spending $7 grand on it. So if anyone wants to maybe send me their copy, I'm not gonna say no, I think that would be pretty cool, Otherwise, I might see you in another video 10 years from now when I accidentally find one on Hard Rubbish. Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner is pretty cool. I vibe the shit out. That sounds wrong. Yeah, I might do another take of that. This is the 5th sub-series. There is a fan translation script out there if you do want to check it out. It's a lot of fun and pretty unique story-wise. This is my favorite branch of Megaten, as it has some of the craziest stories with, a lot of unique mythology. It also has buff Sid Davis, and I think that's great. Next is Megami I hate saying this word. Megami Ibunroku Persona, the father to the biggest branch of Megaten. This is the 6th sub-series and is all around a pretty neat game. This was the first Megaten RPG to be localized, and it wasn't localized very well. I don't have the English version, I wish I did. It's one of the more expensive games in the series, and I want to say the most expensive Persona game, and sometimes be more expensive than a lot of the collector's editions. But yeah, this trend of the Japanese games being significantly cheaper than their English counterparts does continue for a little while. Almost a year later, another version of Devil Summoner called the Special Box released, which came with the Akuma Zensho, essentially an on-disc compendium. I'd love to show you this special box, but both times I tried to buy one, the seller sent me the wrong thing, and it would have cost more to send it back, so I don't have it. Giten Megami Tensei Tokyo Mokushiroku is a bit of a pricey one, mostly because, nobody bought it, nor did they know it existed until more recently. This one's known for being kind of raunchy. We have some sexy scenes and hot babes. And yeah, this version cost me significantly more than I would like to admit. Next is the first best edition, as I like to call them. This is the Sega Saturn Collection version of Devil Summoner. Most of these are fairly cheap. Then we have the PlayStation The Best version of the first Persona, and if it wasn't obvious, these are just re-releases. I don't like these versions, I just enable them to happen. Then we have a bit of an oddball. So this is the only time we've had a physical demo disc for a game, being Devil Summoner Soul Hackers and Ronde. As the name implies, it's, a demo of both games. But then, enter Ronde. Regrettably, one of the games that we've never received. In order to honor it, I bought this sealed copy of the game that I will only ever open if we receive an official English version. Like a fine wine, it sleeps, aging in an attempt to alter its aroma and taste. No, it's actually kind of fucked. Can't wait to play this one after every other Megaten game has been fan translated and, there's none left, so somebody just has to translate Ronde, but Yeah, well, I mean, we've got a couple of years left. So from one of the worst games in the series to an absolute banger, Devil Summoner Soul Hackers. We eventually got an English translation on the 3DS, and I definitely recommend checking it out. It's got one of my favorite stories in the series. Again, these are fairly cheap, and I don't believe they went up in price with the release of Soul Hackers 2. But yeah, it's a good game. Go play it. Similar to the first game, it eventually released with the Akuma Zensho Dainishuu, another on-disc compendium. Around a year later, Soul Hackers would then get a release on the PlayStation 1. I'm pretty sure that this is almost a one-to-one port considering the Saturn's failure, but I've also just never really checked this version out. Following that was another massive game, Persona 2 Innocent Sin. This one's got another insane story with great characters and the first big leap from first-person dungeon crawling. If you haven't played this one and are a Persona fan, you're missing out. It's very easy, you can realistically put it on auto, but you should experience this one. Obviously on the PSP, that's the only time we got an English translation. Speaking of Persona games you should play, you should also play Persona 1. I didn't mention that before. Oh, but they're outdated. Man, shut up. This here is the PC release, and I'll shout out Glib or Kid Capes for helping me get this one at a relatively good price. Sadly, my copy didn't come with the Igor card, and this is, you know, a fact that I've cried many nights over. We then have our first, arguably Megaten game, Maken X for the Dreamcast, another one that my friend Dan Hand gave me. People will debate whether this game is a Megaten game for the rest of time. It's not like there's ever been a specific set of rules to the series. It literally tackles every genre to man, every target audience. Sometimes, you know, demon designs are completely different or replaced. Hell, almost every Japanese title doesn't even make mention of the brand name. We've got rhythm games, stories about pop idols, we've got stories about eating people. It really doesn't matter. As such, I will now be including Sonic Forces into the collection as this is my video and I'm the one talking. Now to end the first episode off, we have Giten Megami Tensei again, but this time for normal PCs. This one has a lady on the front and I will now censor it. I honestly really like this cover art, not just because it has a naked lady on the front, but it's just it's just very looking at it now. It feels very grand, dignified. Yeah, I just like the naked lady. This I bought back when people simply didn't know about this game, and I wish it had remained that way until I bought the other version, but well, here we are. And that's gonna do it for this video. So far, we've only covered about a quarter of what's here and about 15% of, you know, everything total. In other words, there is a lot more to showcase. You can expect the second part soon enough. If it is already out, then it should be on the screen. I think I can do that. I don't know, is that like a thing that you can still do? You obviously know how to stay updated. Did you know that only 99% of my subscribers drink water? So if you're in that, you know, 1% that doesn't drink water, then you should. Yeah, so in the next episode, we will be delving into quite a few collector's editions, well-known games, and start breaking into the 10-15 copies of Nocturne that I've got here. I hope you've enjoyed my scuffed commentary. This is the first time I've ever done something like this, and I took my time trying to make it as unique as I possibly could, so any feedback is appreciated. Likewise, you can always check out the other people that helped me make this possible. Their links to their social medias and whatnot will be in the description. Anyway, take care, and until we see each other again, do you have anything to add?